China is spiraling into an abyss, overwhelmed not only by catastrophic floods, but by the cascading consequences of decades of greed, mismanagement, and decaying infrastructure. From the heartlands of Hunan to the hills of Guizhou and the plains of Hubei, unprecedented rainfall is tearing through the nation's fragile network of Tofu-Dreg dams, shoddily constructed relics of a bygone era, now crumbling under nature's wrath. Entire communities are erased in hours, swept away by torrents of water. Families huddle on rooftops, stranded as lifelines like roads and bridges vanish into muddy rivers. This exposé unveils the horrifying reality behind the headlines: a nation betrayed by its own systems, where corrupt priorities and silenced warnings have left millions to drown in despair. A flood of catastrophe. Central China, under siege. The summer of 2025 has unleashed a relentless deluge across China's central provinces, transforming bustling cities into apocalyptic waterways and fertile fields into desolate swamps. Hunan, Hubei, Guizhou, and neighboring regions are reeling from rainfall levels, unmatched in living memory, with rivers swelling to record heights and infrastructure buckling under the strain. In Hubei's Badong County, a staggering 28 inches of rain fell in a single day, submerging entire towns in a matter of hours. The Gulu River rose 25 feet, engulfing homes and livelihoods. The Liwei River reached its highest level ever recorded, isolating communities and leaving thousands stranded. Over 450,000 people have been impacted, with 120,000 forced to flee, clutching only what they could carry. In Hunan's Wulong, a shopkeeper stood helplessly as floodwaters consumed her family's clothing store. "We lost 1.2 million yuan, she sobbed. "I owe 350,000 yuan a month, and 25 years of savings are gone." In Guizhou, farmers watched helplessly as orchards were swept away with losses exceeding 1 million yuan in a single night. In Sanji, a newly opened supermarket was inundated on its first day, with the owner lamenting, "Everything 250,000 yuan in stock destroyed in hours. Landslides have buried villages, collapsed bridges have severed connections, and roads have dissolved into raging currents, leaving entire regions cut off from aid. The human toll is heart-wrenching." In Hunan, a young mother clung to her 2 children on the roof of their home as floodwaters surged below their possessions, floating away. "We thought the dam would protect us," she said, her voice breaking. "Now we have nothing." In Hubei, a farmer surveyed his submerged fields where rice crops he'd tended for months were reduced to sludge. "This was our livelihood," he said. "Now it's just mud." In Guizhou, a small business owner stood in ankle-deep water inside his electronics shop, salvaging what little he could. "I invested everything here," he said. "The flood took it all in one night." Tofu-Dreg Dam's monuments to negligence. At the core of this disaster lies China's crumbling network of 100,000 dams, many built during the chaotic Great Leap Forward, 1958 to 1962, when political zeal overshadowed engineering integrity. Constructed with subpar materials, untrained workers, and hasty designs, these Tofu-Dreg dams, so named for their fragility, like tofu collapsing under pressure, were meant to harness rivers and symbolize progress. Instead, they are now lethal liabilities. Over 48,000 dams line the Yangtze River basin, with 14,000 in Hunan alone, but decades of neglect and inadequate maintenance have rendered them perilously unstable. Experts like hydrologist Li Wei warned as early as the 1980s that these structures, especially in Henan, were disasters in waiting. From 1954 to 2021, over 3,700 dams collapsed, an average of more than 55 per year. In 2022, UN expert Amara Silva flagged the rapid deterioration of dams over 50 years old, warning of their vulnerability to intensifying climate events. Yet these alerts were ignored. The 1975 Banqiao Dam collapse remains a haunting precedent. 240,000 lives were lost when authorities failed to evacuate a tragedy hidden by the Chinese Communist Party (CCP) until 2005. as reported by Human Rights Watch. Today, the crisis is repeating itself. Over 4,000 dams are at imminent risk of failure, with 250 dikes near Dongting Lake breached. The Three Gorges Dam, once hailed as a marvel, is under unprecedented strain, releasing torrents into already flooded regions, worsening the devastation. Shockingly, over 33,000 dams have not undergone required safety checks, leaving communities vulnerable. In Guizhou, a dam failure obliterated a village, leaving survivors to grieve amid the wreckage. "They promised us safety," one resident wept. "Instead, they gave us ruin." The scale of the failure is staggering. In Hunan, a dam collapse sent a wall of water through a rural community, destroying homes, schools, and clinics. Survivors described a roar like a freight train as the flood hit, giving them mere minutes to escape. In Hubei, a breached dike flooded a market town, submerging shops and leaving merchants to salvage waterlogged goods. "We rebuilt after the last flood," one shopkeeper said. "Now we start from nothing again." A regime that sacrifices its people. The floods reveal not just failing dams, but a deeper systemic rot. Billions of yuan were poured into flood defenses, yet cities are submerged and homes are islands. The CCP's obsession with protecting infrastructure over human lives has led to chilling decisions. In 2023, The Guardian exposed how Hebei's Xiong'an was deliberately flooded to spare Beijing with no warning to residents. Entire neighborhoods were sacrificed, leaving locals to ask, "Why are we always the ones who suffer?" This pattern of prioritizing political optics over human welfare is not new. In 2021, Henan's Zhengzhou floods killed hundreds after authorities delayed warnings to avoid panic, leaving commuters trapped in subway tunnels. Today, similar decisions are costing lives. In Hubei, residents reported receiving no alerts before a dam release sent water surging through their villages. "We woke up to water at our doors," one survivor said. "No one told us it was coming." Disaster response has been equally catastrophic. After the 2010 Yushu earthquake, over 85% of relief funds were misallocated or left unused, with supplies spoiling while victims shivered in tents. Red Cross China faced accusations of embezzlement, shattering public faith. Today, fed-up citizens are bypassing official channels, organizing grassroots efforts to deliver food and supplies to flood zones. In Hunan, local fishermen use their boats to rescue stranded families, navigating treacherous waters where official rescue teams failed to appear. "The government abandons us, so we save ourselves," one volunteer declared. Economic devastation. A nation in freefall. The floods are compounding an already devastating economic collapse, particularly in Guangdong, once China's manufacturing powerhouse. Shenzhen and Dongguan, once dubbed the world's factory, are now ghost towns of shuttered factories and deserted streets. In Shenzhen's Longhua district, a young woman stood at Qinghu Station, her face gaunt from 3 days without food. "I haven't found work," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm starving and no one helps." Passers-by, moved by her plight, offered small sums, 2 yuan here, 5 yuan there, but it's a drop in the bucket against the tide of despair. In Foshan, once bustling commercial hubs are now eerily silent, with for lease signs plastered across shopping malls and startup spaces. In Dongguan, even central areas like Nancheng and Guancheng are lined with closed storefronts. A Shenzhen investor described the collapse. "Orders are down 73%, profit margins are razor thin, and factories are collapsing every 3 days. Over 85% of businesses are losing money. 10% teeter on bankruptcy, and only 5% scrape by with minimal profits." The garment village in Guangzhou, once a beacon for day laborers, now sees workers outnumbering jobs. A single job opening draws dozens of applicants, many of whom resort to loitering in supermarkets for free air conditioning. "Work is impossible to find," one laborer said. "We can't afford a 15 yuan bunk bed, so we sleep on the streets." Factories are relocating to Southeast Asia, leaving behind empty industrial zones and unemployed workers. In Shenzhen's Longgang district, urban villages are abandoned, and even high-end areas like Coastal City and Dongmen are desolate. In Zhangjiajie, a once thriving tourist hotspot, the situation is equally grim. Every July, this place was packed, a local vendor said, gesturing at empty streets. Now, even with free tickets, no one comes. Big tour buses sit idle and scenic spots are ghost towns. This is the worst year in decades, he added. Tourism is dead. Social fallout, desperation, and defiance. The floods and economic collapse have driven millions to the brink. In Shenzhen's Tianxiang East Station, homeless men and women, including musicians and elderly artists, sleep on overpasses, unable to afford shelter. A young woman, a university graduate with a bachelor's degree, stood at Qinghu Station, her eyes hollow from hunger. "I'm a graduate, but I'm begging for factory work," she said. "They don't even want me as a laborer." She hadn't eaten in 3 days, a stark symbol of a generation crushed by economic collapse. In Wuhan, the situation is dire. Wholesale bosses at Hanjiang Street are crying, a local said. Produce vendors at Baishazhou, tech bosses at Guanggu, restaurant owners, fruit sellers, hairdressers, all are broke. Even real estate and renovation businesses are collapsing. "Everyone's crying," he said. "We're all barely surviving." Public anger is erupting. In Hunan, a man nicknamed Brother 800 for an 800 yuan traffic fine live-streamed his confrontation with police, decrying systemic corruption. His video, which sparked the 800 movement, was swiftly censored, but resonated deeply, galvanizing public frustration. Social media posts about flood victims, joblessness, or protests vanish instantly from WeChat and Douyin. They pull bodies from the water, but the news stays silent, a Guizhou resident whispered on X before their account was locked. The job market is a nightmare. In Shenzhen, a job posting for an e-commerce position with a 3,500 yuan monthly salary came with brutal conditions: a bachelor's degree, age under 30, mandatory overtime without pay, and a trial period at half salary with no benefits. 2 of those requirements violate labor laws, a recruiter admitted. In Hangzhou, a recent graduate was reduced to working as a security guard after failing to land better jobs. "They tell us to shed our scholars' robes," he said. "Now we're shedding our dignity. Master's degree holders are delivering food, and even those jobs are scarce." In Jinan, a delivery worker described the grind: "I run 3 platforms, work 10 hours, and barely make 200 yuan a day. A bowl of noodles at home costs me 5 yuan. Eating out, that's 30 yuan. I can't afford," he added. The platforms churn through workers like weeds. Hundreds come and go in months. There's no stability. At Jinan's Hanyuan Valley, once a bustling commercial hub, nearly all shops are shuttered. "Only 1 restaurant is left," a worker said. "The rest are gone." Censorship and cover-ups. A regime in denial. The CCP's response has been to smother the truth with ruthless censorship. Vice Premier Zhang Guoqing, tasked with disaster response, has been criticized for visiting industrial zones while flood victims languished. "They're more interested in power struggles than people's lives," commentator Li Ling told The Times. Rumors of Xi Jinping's weakening authority are rife, with Central Military Commission Vice Chairman Zhang Youxia reportedly consolidating influence. The mysterious 2023 death of former Premier Li Keqiang has fueled suspicions of foul play, adding to public distrust. The crisis of missing persons. 1 million annually, including 200,000 children, has raised chilling fears of organ harvesting. The U.S. House's H.R. 1540 bill, targeting organ harvesting from Falun Gong practitioners, has amplified global concern. Their cameras catch everything, yet thousands vanish. One netizen raged on X before their post was deleted. On platforms like Jihu, discussions about soaring unemployment and debt are widespread. From the state to local governments, from enterprises to individuals, everyone's drowning in debt, one blogger wrote. "This is a deadlock no one can break." A Sichuan netizen warned, "If this continues, we're heading back to the hardships of the 1960s. Survival is all that matters." A nation on the brink. China is teetering on the edge of collapse, besieged by floods, failing infrastructure, and economic ruin. The Tofu-Dreg dams built on corruption and haste are crumbling just as trust in the CCP erodes. From submerged villages in Hunan to deserted factories in Shenzhen, from starving graduates in Longhua to empty tourist spots in Zhangjiajie, the nation is sinking under the weight of its own failures. The heavens rage, the people suffer, and the regime scrambles to hide the truth. Is this the beginning of the end for the CCP? Share this story, demand accountability, and join us in exposing China's hidden crisis.